What's going on, guys? My name is Lieben, and today I'm going to be replacing the engine mounts on my Civic. So two of them are pretty much gone. Like when I took it off, the rubbers completely fell off, so I needed to replace those. And I decided if I'm going to do that, most likely the other two are probably really close to being gone as well. So I decided just to go ahead and buy the set, which includes 4 engine mounts, and I'll just go ahead and replace them now. I didn't record filming the engine mainly because I didn't think I was going to film anything with this car, but it's taken me such a long time that I decided why not just go ahead and do some videos on it. Another reason why I decided to go ahead and film is because I know usually when the engine's in the car, it's a lot harder to go ahead and sometimes spot these things or certain things, or like where the bolts are, because it's in an uncomfortable spot or there's something kind of in the way. So I thought, now that I have the engine, go ahead and still do this video, so hopefully you guys have a better picture and can see more clearly where the engine mounts and the bolts are at. That being said, most of these are pretty easy to find. I'm sure if anyone did this, they wouldn't have that much issue being able to find where the bolts are to take off the engine mounts. But I'm gonna go ahead and start with this one right here. This is one of the engine bushings that when I took the engine and transmission off, I took them off at the same time. This was one of the engine mounts that I did not have to take off. There was basically 2 of them. It was this one here and the rear one over there, which actually that bracket connects to the transmission. It goes on the transmission side. Those were the only 2 I didn't have to take off. So those are going to be the only 2 I actually keep on here when I go ahead and install the engine back on. Now there's one that goes in that space right there. That one I had to go ahead and take off because it was bumping into the transmission when I took off. That one right there I also had to go ahead and take off because as I was raising up the engine and transmission, it was actually starting to bump against the radiator fan. So I went ahead and took that one off, and that gave it enough clearance to be able to raise it all the way up and take the engine and transmission out. So now with this first one here, it seems pretty straightforward. All of these 3 bolts seem to be the only ones holding it down. They're all 14mm bolts, so I'll just go ahead and unbolt them. And here we have the old bushing. Now this one doesn't seem like it was in that rough of shape, but like I said, might as well just go ahead and be on the safe side and replace it. Now if you're like me and keep like the old nut and washer on there, just make sure to go ahead and if yours doesn't come, if the new one doesn't come with any, make sure you put it on there so you're not missing it when you go and install the engine. Alright guys, so it seems like once again I have played myself, and that being because again I went ahead and bought some cheap eBay parts and they don't happen to be 100% the same. No surprise there. But yeah, if we go ahead and look at the new one compared to the old one, one of the things that will stand out at first is the design of the bottom right here where it sits. The old one actually seems to be a little bit bigger, have a bigger encasing than the old one. It's also hollow on the bottom, whereas this one right here actually has like another rubber cover on there. But the main thing, I still would have put this one on, but the thing that really threw me off is actually where these guides are right here. So on the black one, actually let me make sure they're kind of in the same position. Yeah, they are. So if you see, the guide on the new one is basically in line with this hole right here, whereas for the old one it is a little bit off center. And I will show you guys how that actually affects it. If I go ahead and grab this old one here. Here I have the engine with the mount right here. Okay, so if we go ahead and put the engine mount underneath right here, we will see, or hopefully you guys can see right there, there is a little notch right there where actually the guide fits perfectly underneath, and therefore this I guess bracket can go ahead and actually sit flush with the engine mount. So now if we go ahead and grab the other one, so this one right here, because that guide is not in the same location, when I go ahead and put it on the bracket right here, there is a big gap, and that being because the guide is actually touching right there on the bracket. So yeah, I was actually thinking about grinding down that guide to go ahead and actually have it be flush, but I thought that was just too much work, and I thought with it not even being the same, it really wasn't worth it. I went ahead and looked over the old bushy, and honestly it doesn't really seem, I mean right there it looks like it might be starting to tear, but besides from that, on the top right here it seems to be in pretty decent condition. So I'll just go ahead and keep that one on there, and I'll just go ahead and see if the other ones fit, and then I'll go ahead and just replace the other ones. I will note that in my defense, when I went ahead and used eBay, I went ahead and put my car's information and it said that it would fit. I mean, I know that's not always 100% true, but just in case these don't fit, then I will go ahead and return them. But if it's just this one that doesn't fit or is not the same, then I'll just go ahead and replace the other three. But yeah, for putting this one back, it's the same as just taking it off. You just want to go ahead and align the holes right there and then just go ahead and bolt them down. I won't use the impact to actually tie them down because I don't want to go ahead and over tie them and possibly strip them. So just go ahead and tie them down with a ratchet, and I'm sure these probably have a specific torque that they have to be tying down to, but I'm just gonna go ahead and wing it and just tying them down until they feel pretty snug. Alright, so I've gone ahead and tying those 3 bolts now, so now I can go ahead and move over to the next one, which is probably gonna be that one there, because I went ahead and took a glance at one of the new ones, or the other one that corresponds to that one, and I think there might be some differences in that one, so I want to go ahead and check that one out. But yeah, like I said, assuming all 3 of those rest of them fit with this one, I will probably just go ahead and try and see if I can go ahead and resell it. I believe that one's actually for a sedan. I think that's what the difference is, so I'll go ahead and look that up, and if that's true, then I'll just go ahead and try reselling it to someone who might need it. Alright, and here we have both of the right hand side engine mounts. I guess these would be called transmission mounts because that's where it connects to. Here is the new one and here is the old one. Here you guys can see that, yeah, this is one of the ones that definitely needed to be replaced, because once I took it off it completely fell apart. So one of the concerns that I had with this was that this one here had this piece right here, whereas I thought I could have put it back on this one, but this one actually doesn't have a spot where I can screw it on. I went ahead and looked online, and from what I can tell, this is supposed to be a weight. I'm guessing that's probably to reduce vibrations. I'm not 100% sure on that, but from what I can tell, this one has it obviously, and then this one I can't put it on it. I'm gonna go ahead and change this one still. Hopefully that piece right there doesn't cause that big of an issue. I don't see any other piece actually going onto it to say that it is actually very it's needed for the transmission and engine to be put on. I believe, like I said, it's just a weight, hopefully just to keep the vibrations of the engine and transmission down. The only other concerns that I would have would be that right here, where the bolt that actually connects the transmission bracket onto the mount, it wouldn't line up because it's different. I'll go ahead and check these 3 bolts that hold it onto the frame of the car. Those I can check pretty easily right now. But that one I really won't be able to see if it's off-centered until I go and actually put the transmission back onto the car, because I can go ahead and test it onto the bracket right now, but I mean I'd be able to move this to make it centered, and then it would look like it'll fit, but then I won't know until it's actually on the car. But yeah, for right now I'm gonna go ahead and just go ahead and bolt it onto the car. This was one of the ones that I needed to remove so I could have more space and freely be able to take the transmission off. So I'll just go ahead and put the 3 bolts on just to make sure they align, but then I'm gonna have to go ahead and take it off either way. So if you guys can see, there's 3 bolts right there, holes right there where the bolts are gonna go. That's where the top one goes. That right there is the bottom one, and down right there is the other bottom one. There's other 2 holes right there which I really don't know what they're for. I didn't have to take off anything else if I can remember from there, so they just might just be some extra holes there right there. But yeah, let me go ahead and grab the piece or the engine mount, and I'll go ahead and install it. Alright, so reason number 2 why you shouldn't get cheap parts. Hopefully I can align this right here. So I don't know if you guys can see in that hole right there, but there seems to be, I don't know if they like used some solder and it just spilled over it, but there is some solder in that hole, and unfortunately there is enough right there that I can't fit the bolt through it. It keeps on touching onto that solder and it just won't go through. But anyway, so what I'm gonna have to go ahead and do is either use a Dremel tool or a file to go ahead and file that down to make the opening bigger, and then hopefully the bolt will be able to fit through and I can go ahead and bolt it down. These parts, man, they really don't make it easy on you just to go ahead and put 3 bolts on. Okay, so I went ahead and just filed the hole down a little bit bigger, and now that what seemed to be like some solder or just some extra material has been filed away. I used a Dremel tool just to make it a lot faster than having to file it down by hand. I went ahead and checked the bolt, and now yeah, all the bolts can fit all through the holes. So now let's try it for a second time to see if I can go ahead and just bolt down 3 bolts, because apparently I can't catch a break with this with this project. And I did forget to mention that these, unlike the other ones, are not 14 millimeters. These are 17 millimeter bolts. So I'm just gonna go ahead and hand tighten them all the way down, make sure they don't get caught on anything, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and pull them back out, because like I said, this one it doesn't give me enough room to put the transmission back in. I'll keep this one in for now just so I don't lose any of the bolts, but hopefully I remember to take it off when I go ahead and put the engine and transmission back on. And if any of you guys actually know what that piece on there on that engine mount is for, go ahead and let me know. Like I said, I just think I read that it was a weight, so I'm assuming it's to minimize vibration. But if there's any other reason why it might be on there, please go ahead and let me know down in the comments. Alright, and here we have the front transmission mount. Now finally, it looks to be that there's one that's identical to the old one. Hopefully that means it's gonna fit without any issues, knock on wood. But yeah, here we have the new one, and as you can see, the only difference being that the old one has a big chunk of rubber missing. But yeah, this is only bolted down on 2 screws that go onto, or 2 bolts that go onto the transmission, and then this right here goes onto the subframe of the car. But just to make sure, I'll go ahead and bolt these down onto the transmission just to make sure that these bolts, or these holes right here, actually line up. And here I can show you. So it is right there where the bushing or the transmission mount goes on. See here, so it would fit in like this, and it does seem to line up. It might be kind of dark, so you guys might not be able to see it. So it does seem to line up, at least on this side. I have to check the other side as well. So yes, it also seems to line up on that side as well. Hopefully once the transmission is in, it will also continue to line up. But for right now, let's go ahead and see if we can bolt it down here to the transmission. And actually what I noticed was the previous owners or whatever, this isn't the original transmission, so when they put these ones on, of course they went ahead and tightened. I'm guessing too much. They probably used an impact, which is why I don't like using impact wrenches or impact drivers to go ahead and bolt down bolts, because it's very easily to over tighten and break things. And as you can see right there, there's a chunk right there missing, but it has some threads, I think, still enough that I can go ahead and tighten it to the bottom there. All right, and I'm not 100% sure what's the top and what's the bottom. I'm assuming it'd probably go something like this. Yeah, let's try the other way. Oh yeah, it's definitely the other way. So it seems that the bent part actually goes to the bottom. It goes like that. So I'll go ahead and put the bottom bolt down first. Now that that one's in, go ahead and put this top bolt, which isn't really doing much. I guess it's not really doing anything at all. Alright, so you guys get the gist basically. So I went ahead and just tightened it on the bottom one. It's not even bottomed out. Let's see if you guys can see from this angle. So it's right there where the bottom bolt goes. There is the top one. Assuming you guys didn't have a belt housing that was cracked or broken, you would be bolting them down with those 2 bolts. And like I said, this is where the other bolt goes that actually connects it down to the subframe. One thing that I did forget to mention was that the 2 bolts that go onto the transmission, they are both 17 millimeter bolts. Now the one that goes right here that connects it to the subframe, if I remember correctly, if it's not a 17 as well, it's going to be a 19 millimeter, but it's one of those 2. I can't remember off the top of my head. Alright, and lastly we have this back engine mount right here and the bushing that needs to be replaced. Now this is the most challenging one. Not that it is challenging, but compared to the other ones, it's in a harder to reach area. There shouldn't really be that much issues. The only thing that I can think of, I went ahead and looked under there, and the bolts, the head of the bolts look kind of rusty, so I'm kind of scared they might end up stripping. If they don't, then with the impact wrench it should be very easy to take those 3 bolts off. So it'll be 3 on the bottom, and then that one right there that actually grabs onto this bracket right here, that holds it onto the bushing or the mount. Okay, so I'm now underneath the car. Here you can see the bracket that actually connects to the transmission. The mount is up here. I'll go ahead and show you where the 3 bolts that we need to remove are that hold on to the mount. So there's one there, it's dark so you can't see. There's another one here underneath the exhaust, so you will have to move it a little bit off to the side. If you have it connected to the engine, well, you might have to unbolt it so you have more movement, but it's that one right there, and you can see if you're down here it's literally like right above the exhaust, so that will have to be moved. And then the other one is actually up there. So all 3 of those bolts right there are 14 millimeters. You will also most likely, like what I did, have to go and clean out the holes because they were stuffed with grime and just road dirt and all that. So I went ahead and just grabbed the flathead and cleaned it around so that the socket could fit in there properly. And yeah, so basically what I'm going to go ahead and do is use an impact to hopefully remove these bolts quicker, because I feel like I could do it probably, you can probably do it with like a breaker bar, but it will take a little bit longer. I'm hoping because they look a little bit rusted with the impact wrench, that some of that rust that's kind of binded together goes ahead and breaks loose. Either that or they'll go ahead and strip from the head, which I really hope that doesn't happen. But yeah, there's not really that great of an angle down here, so I'm just gonna basically go ahead and cut to whether I've taken all of the bolts out or they've stripped and I've decided to go ahead and leave this engine mount in. Alright, thank goodness I was able to take all of them 4 off. But let me tell you, it did not make it easy on me. These are some huge bolts. Go ahead, this one right here is the biggest one. There you go. But this one actually wasn't even the one that caused me the most trouble. It was actually this one here, just because of how seized up it was. I mean, I wasn't even able to take it off with the impact wrench. I actually had to go ahead and use a breaker bar and then another cheater bar on top of that so I could go ahead and loosen this one. But I'm telling you, man, it did not sound happy when I was loosening it up. It kept on making like a snapping sound, is I guess the best that I can describe it. What sounded like metal on metal that was smacking against each other. But finally, with some help of some lubricating or penetrating oil, I was able to get them all. This one, like I said, is the one that caused me the most problem. It's the medium-sized one, so it's that one right there was the longest one. And then you have this one that's a medium-sized one, and then the back one that I showed you earlier, that hole right there, that's just a small bolt. That one was also really pretty easy to take off. But yeah, now I'm kind of worried if I'm going to be able to actually take the other last remaining bolt that takes the mount, that separates the mount from the bracket. Okay, so here we have the bracket and the mount removed out of the car but still connected through that bolt right there. So those 3 bolts that I just went ahead and took out are 14 millimeters. That one right there is a 17 millimeter, and of course it's also proving to be challenging to take off. I'm using my impact wrench right there and it's just spinning, but it's not coming out. Well, actually I don't even think it's the bolt that's spinning, but this like spacer it has right there, that's spinning around, but I don't think it's the bolt that's coming out at all, or else it'd be out already. But I can go ahead and show you guys. I have to go ahead and hold it down with my foot or else it's gonna spin everywhere. But here you guys will see what I'm talking about. So yeah, there you guys can see that the spacer is turning, but that bolt is not getting loose. I've gone ahead and put penetrating oil on all of the mating surface. So I put some right there on the end, right there in between, and then on both sides right there in between as well. And then right there where the head of the bolt touches the spacer. But it has not helped at all. Alright, so this is actually going to be a note to self. It seems like for this job, the impact wrench honestly is not the best tool. I went ahead and just grabbed that breaker bar right there. As you can see, I have it clamped down. And then with the breaker bar, it was super easy for this to get loose. I'm pretty sure now with this normal ratchet, I can finish getting it. Yeah, it's like completely loose. And if you can see right here, the bolt is actually going in, so it's actually coming out. From this side, you can see it's being spaced. I have no idea what the physics of this are, that the impact wrench wasn't able to remove it. It was literally just spinning back and forth. And now that I did it with manually with a breaker bar, it came out so easily. I don't know if the impact wrench loosened it or what, but yeah, I mean, I guess this is a note for all you guys too. Just because the impact wrench has more power and more speed doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna get the job done quicker. If I would have just done this the first time, or instead of messing with the impact wrench, I would have gotten this loose a lot quicker. But yeah, now I just guess I'll go ahead and continue getting the rest of the bolt off. And here we have it, guys. If I can pull it out, you can see that it was starting to go ahead and separate. The rubber was starting to separate. So this one, maybe it could have lasted a little bit more, but luckily I have the other one. Hopefully it fits, so we can go ahead and replace this one as well, and then just go ahead and install it back now that I already have it here on the vise. So here I have both the new and the old mount. They look pretty much the same. The only thing I can say is that the original one, I actually saw it actually says somewhere here, it says Honda. So this is an OEM one. That one does seem to be beefier than this aftermarket one. That's pretty much the only difference that I could tell. The bolt holes seem to be in the same position. If we look at the rubber part, like I said right there, that one seems to be had already been separating. This one right here in the bottom still seems to be connected. That one, I'm guessing it's supposed to be separated from the top. There's a little bit of a gap, but still right here it's way more separated. You can tell that gap a lot more. I think because of that same reason too, or I don't know, I'm not 100% sure. That one does seem to be a little bit taller. I don't know if it's from age, it just started stretching a little bit more. I guess we'll find out once I start installing it, and if everything lines up, then we should be good. But yeah, I've gone ahead and also cleaned up the hole right here. Hopefully that just makes it easier to screw on. There's less chance of the threads cross-threading. But yeah, now we'll just go ahead and put everything back together. Okay, so here I have the mount connected to the bracket. I actually had to go ahead and take it off the vise because I forgot what orientation it went, and that's something to keep in mind. You don't want to put it backwards, or like, let's say facing that way, because then the bracket would be facing the opposite. It wouldn't fit. Basically that's what that means, it wouldn't fit. So I had to take it off and then basically kind of see how the car was, the orientation of the car. So I made sure I had it in the right direction, and now as you can see, it would go on the car like that basically. So now all that's left is to go ahead and put those 3 bolts that are on the subframe so that it goes ahead and stays on the car. Alright guys, and there you have it. I went ahead and bolted down and tightened down the 3 bolts. There's one right there, the other one right there, and again the back one right there. Again, I didn't show it because of the lack of room down here, and also it's pretty repetitive. I just went ahead and tightened the same bolts that I went ahead and took off. But now the mount is on there sturdy. There's a little bit of movement, but obviously because of the bushing, but you can definitely tell a difference that it's a lot more stiffer now with that new one than compared to when I was moving it with the old one. This bracket right here had a lot more movement. Hopefully that's a good thing, because at the same time I know you don't want it to be too stiff, because then that kind of defeats the whole purpose of having the rubber mounts, kind of to absorb the vibration. But yeah, but anyways, there we go. That was the last one. I knew that was going to be the most challenging, which is why I kind of left it till the end. But as you guys can see, it's not impossible. I went ahead and was able to replace it. So there is the one on the back there. That is the one that I didn't end up changing because it was just too different and I didn't want to risk it. And right here is the one on the right hand side, the one that doesn't have the weight. And then right here we have where the front transmission mount would go. So yeah, hopefully now you guys have a general idea of how to go ahead and remove and replacing all of these engine mounts. If you guys found this video informative, please go ahead, or you guys liked it, please go ahead, like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next one.
Repeat after me. Hakuna Matata.